This is Miss Andrea with some unsolicited homeschool advice. If you would like to solicit personalized homeschool advice directly from me, leave a comment below and I will answer your question. In the meantime, I'm going to pull some stuff off of Reddit and I hope it applies to you. This is more of a statement than a question, but it is super important. It says, "Hi, homeschoolers. I used to teach mechanical engineering at a university, and I've also worked with thousands of kids over the years through homeschool programs. And I have to say, college students don't usually struggle with calculus or advanced formulas. It's the basics that trip them up. Things like fractions and decimals. Did you know that 30% of adults only have math skills up to counting? Interpreting word problems and applications of math concepts, which is super important to estimating and checking if an answer makes sense, instead of poring over exact numbers only to realize you're headed in the entire wrong direction after doing too much work. These are skills that often get glossed over or skipped, but they really matter later on. I just wanted to encourage you, if you're teaching math at home, take the time to go deep on these ideas. Talk about why something works, not just how. Play with numbers. Let your kids get curious. Don't just memorize without taking time to understanding it. Just wanted to share in case anyone here is wondering if it's worth it to slow down or review simple stuff. Yes, it absolutely is. I would say slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Don't be in a rush and don't cram. Allow your kids the space and time to think and process what they're learning. I hope this is helpful. Please feel free to chime in with your ideas. So I have a homeschool program and I teach middle school and high school students, right? And whenever they're getting ready to go to take an SAT or an ACT or a PSAT, I always stop the parents and I give the same advice. I always say, your child has a decent understanding of their math concepts. However, I need them to go back and review pre-algebra. When they make mistakes, it is in the basic computations. So kids need to understand, have a really good understanding of course, multiplication, right? Opposite of multiplication is division. Then fractions, decimals, percentages. These three things are interchangeable and they need to be able to interchange them. And then they need to be able to do some graphing. If they can't do these things, all the knowledge of higher math concepts is not going to help when they get the basic math wrong. So please listen to this person's advice. I would spend, there's two ways to do this. One way is before every math lesson starts, do a worksheet on those concepts, right? Multiplication, division, fractions, decimals, percentages, every day, 10 minutes, 10 questions, right? Or you can spend your summers doing reviews on concepts that they've learned in the past. But this person's right, and this is where homeschoolers go wrong. What else do we have? So I just mentioned doing math review in the summer. And this person asks, anyone else here do year-round homeschooling? I feel bad for my kid, 5 years old, that they don't get a whole summer to basically do nothing and just mess around like some other kids. But I cannot imagine a nearly 3-month learning break. That seems completely absurd. My kids had summers off, my own personal children, which meant you had to do math every day, you had to play piano every day, and you had to be actively reading a book, one book every 2 weeks, right? Besides that, they were free to do whatever they wanted to do with the rest of their day in the summer. I'm just asking for 2 to 3 hours of your time actively learning. And then the rest of those waking hours, you can do what you please. So yes, I believe in year-round homeschooling. As my kids got older, they started demanding a bit more of a break, but they were doing more intensive work. But for younger kids, I don't see any reason to stop. They don't even know everyone's on a break. You're doing the extra work or the summer schooling work before noon, before the other kids get out of bed and go outside, right? Do what you want. Anyone else homeschooled and encouraged to believe as a child they were a genius and doing amazingly? when they were, in reality, pretty average. I just remember the absolutely crushing realization that I was pretty average academically. It was totally crushing. I do not think my parents were bad parents. They were just out of touch with how high the academic standards were at public schools and how much the children were learning. Let's just flash back 40 years to my high school experience. New York State, graduated in 1986. Got into Fordham University and a private college. I can't remember the name of it. It was a women's college. I got into Cooper Union, but my parents were dead set against Cooper Union. I ended up in Fordham, and I found out that I wasn't nearly as smart as my teachers, my administration, and yes, even my parents thought. Um, I, I'm more of an information absorber. So, of course, that takes 12 months to get through. I'm going to hang with it and I'm going to soak in all that information. But when we cut that learning time in half, man, that kicked my whole tail. And there were just so many more kids that were so much more swift than I. Does that mean I'm stupid? No, I actually have a high IQ. I just didn't learn in a way that worked for college yet. And so what I ended up doing was taking a step back, finishing the first semester, taking a step back, getting a job. That job motivated me to go back to college more than anything else. And then I went to community college for 2 years, and then I finished a 4-year college. But because I had been able to just kind of absorb information, and it didn't hurt that I was the only Black girl in of my more advanced classes, because the advanced classes at my high school were pretty homogeneous. Um, Everyone assumed that I was the most brilliant person on the face of the earth, when in fact, I'm completely ADHD. I'm a little scatterbrained. And once I know something, I know it for life, but it takes me a minute. So I say all this to say this is not a unique issue to homeschoolers. Now, I guess it's a little different if you've got one group of adults telling you that you're brilliant and they're the only group of adults feeding into you. But I promise you, my mother was a teacher, right? And all my teachers knew my mother was a teacher, right? My principal knew my mother was a teacher. My administrator knew my mother was a teacher. What everyone saw was a very compliant child. And so she's brilliant, she's compliant, she doesn't give us much slack. Some people had similar things to say about this because I actually read this the other day. Someone was like, it didn't happen to me because my twin sisters are actually a little bit smarter. And so we could see that some of this is true even in medical school. Top medical students are the ones that learn things easily and fast. There's so much information coming at you in a ceaseless torrent that it's difficult to keep up. And that's where they start thinking maybe I'm not as smart as I thought I was. Some people are saying, well, I was in high school, public school, and I went to regular classes and mostly AP was the top of my class, but I actually struggled with an inferiority complex. I went to school and was given that belief. Very quickly recognized it wasn't the case at university. Parent, no matter what educational setting you are in. And so how do you combat that? How do you combat children getting maybe a little full of themselves academically at what they can accomplish? How do you lower personal expectations while still encouraging? I don't even think I know, but I think you lean in and always point out what you know that child is good at. You find other people outside of yourself, outside of your family, that aren't materially invested in the child to evaluate that talent and to give the children room for improvement. I think the better thing to do instead of always telling a kid that they are the most brilliant person on the face of the earth is to have people around you look at your children and give room for improvement. Find people in the field that your child is leaning toward or in the discipline that your child loves, and then have conversations with your kids and give them pointers. Always giving kids room for improvement will let them, one, know that people believe in them because these people are speaking into them, but also giving them something to improve upon. So Yeah, the word I used growing up was don't soup your kid up too much. Instead, encourage, there's always in their direction where you see a giftedness, but also find ways to give them good feedback. There's always room for improvement, but always give them little things to work on. And that way they'll have confidence, they'll know you believe in them, but won't have an overinflated ego, and they will always study and they will always try. So I gotta go. Bye.